Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Mancini, president of Carteret Community College, and this is Bytes, the official podcast of Carteret Community College. Today, I'm delighted to welcome former trustee of the college, Dr. Matt Zettl. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Well, what is your educational background, and did you know much about what community colleges are, or had you been exposed to them?
Not really. My own educational path was fairly straightforward. I knew from early on in high school that I had wanted to be a physician, and I went to college in a pre-med program. I was accepted into medical school immediately upon my graduation, and I went from medical school into my residency training program. So it was from high school to going into practice, 13 years of school and education. And, my knowledge of community colleges was very limited, actually. I really became more familiar with what community colleges did after I'd been practicing for a while. And as I mentioned earlier, interacting with students from the college and graduates, especially from the nursing program, radiology, respiratory therapy, and so on and so forth. It's interesting. I also read a book, and this was probably 15 years ago, and it was called Shop Class as Soulcraft. And it was written by a gentleman who was very well educated, but had become a motorcycle mechanic. And he was talking about how there were so many people in this country who were very, very bright and involved in careers, primarily working with their hands and so on and so forth, and were very underappreciated.
Wow.
And that got me to thinking more and more about the role of community college, or one of the roles of community colleges. So that was kind of an inspirational book for me, actually.
Sure. Gosh, that reminds me of that saying, if you have a broken down car and there's an auto mechanic and a doctor in the room, the smartest person in the room is the auto mechanic.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you can't outsource getting your car fixed to India.
No.
You have to have somebody here who knows how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, a lot of our listeners may not really know what a community college trustee does or what the Board of Trustees does. Could you talk a little bit about what you learned that role to be?
Yeah, it's the Board of Trustees is the governing body of the college, and in the state of North Carolina, and I think this is probably similar in most states, the exact role and responsibilities of the Board of Trustees is fairly well delineated in the general statutes of the state of North Carolina. Now, they do give the local boards some leeway in deciding how they're going to govern, but they have to meet certain criteria and requirements in providing that governance activity. Probably the most important job of the trustees, and you are certainly well aware of this, is to hire the president of the college.
Yes.
And to evaluate the president's performance on an annual basis. And that's a requirement that is stated, in the statutes.
Yeah.
So we do that, and there are a number of other responsibilities. The board, if you read the statutes carefully, the board is given the responsibility to actually run the college, but they can transfer that responsibility to the president. And I believe that most boards in this state have given the president of their institution the responsibility of the day-to-day operations of the college, hiring and firing personnel, and so on and so forth. And that's the model that we have here. we have turned over those responsibilities to you.
Yes, you have.
But on the other hand, it's also our responsibility to make sure that you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing and are being successful in performing your job as the president.
Yeah, and I have to say I've been so fortunate at Carteret Community College to have a wonderful Board of Trustees, and you've been a really wonderful trustee for us, going above and beyond and being a great listener and provider of advice whenever I've had questions or needed to talk through something, and we've just had really great trustees since I've been there.
Well, I've been on the board, or was on the board for 12 years, and throughout those 12 years, the board was a very collegial body. We had disagreements on things, but discussions were always civil. We came to conclusions and agreements that everyone was comfortable with, and I think that we made a great deal of progress over those 12 years. So I think I've been impressed with the board since I first started on it.
Well, it really does appear that all the trustees who get involved with the college do keep the student at the center of the work. And so student success and learning and making sure the mission of the community college is carried through. And I think that's been evident.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that is certainly one of the most important responsibilities of the college, is being sure that you are meeting those goals.
Yes, that's right. And so I'm the only employee of the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, have the impression that we have some say-so in who the college hires, fires, and so on and so forth. And we actually don't have any role in that. I would modify that statement to say that if we're trying to replace a vice president or somebody like that, we generally are given the opportunity to interview those people and give our opinions, but we're really not part of the decision-making process itself. That's the role of the president. And the president's staff.
Yeah, so what you said earlier about governance and governance versus operations is a really clear-cut delineation of the relationship between the president and the Board of Trustees.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really a great relationship, I think, because the president gets a lot of great advice from the trustees, but then is given the authority to act and to rally a group of really well-qualified folks around the task. So it works well. Some people describe it as swim lanes, right?
Yes. Advice is easy to give. But the part of the understanding, I think, that exists between the president and the board is that the board is there to advise and not to interfere with the operations of the college. So we try, although I've never had a problem picking up the phone and calling one of the vice presidents if I have some questions about things, but the board is not supposed to go around behind the president's back and trying to direct policies with regard to faculty relationships and so on and so forth.
Right. It works well. I think it works really well, and especially because we participate in board training, and also there's a North Carolina Association of Community College Trustees that provides annual ethics training and other information for trustees. There are over 700 trustees across the state at the 58 community colleges, and so there is a degree of uniformity in, as you said, the statutes and the role they play.
Yeah, and there are requirements. I mean, you referred to ethics training. Trustees are required to do ethics training every 2 years, I believe. They're also required to attend a certain number of seminars as kind of continuing education for trustees. And that's something that our own board has started to stress more over the past 4 or 5 years to keep trustees well educated on what their roles are and how they can perform more efficiently and effectively as trustees. And so we've been pushing the educational aspect of it. We've done a couple of education projects with the Belk Center. That's been a good relationship, and I'm hoping that will continue to grow. And maybe you can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, the Belk Center for Community College Leadership and Research is a great resource. It's located at NC State University, and there are a number of really experienced and thoughtful leaders involved with it, and their sole purpose is to help presidents and boards to make good decisions, to learn about their roles, and to work together well. And so we've really benefited from that a lot. And you just reminded me, a lot of people don't know that the board is made up of appointees. And you mentioned before you were appointed by the Board of Education, but I think a lot of people don't realize that our Board of Trustees has 12 members. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there are 12 members, and actually the president of the Student Government Association is a 13th member, a non-voting member.
That's right.
And they diligently attend our meetings and are involved. But we have 4 trustees who are appointed by the County Board of Education. There are 4 trustees that are appointed by the governor, and there are 4 trustees appointed by the county commissioners. Each trustee is appointed for a 4-year term. So at the end of that term, if a trustee wants to continue, he would need to contact the appointing authority who appointed him or her initially and indicate that they are interested in being reappointed, which they may be or not.
That's right. That's right. And so you were reappointed twice more after you served 12 years. Is that right?
Well, I was reappointed twice.
That's great. So what are the lessons you've learned over the 12 years as a trustee of Carteret Community College? What are some of the things that stand out in your mind?
I think the thing that I have come away with that has been most impressive to me is the importance of the community college for Carteret County. The range of opportunities that are available at the community college is simply remarkable. It truly is. I think, when folks think of the community college, they think of someone graduating from high school, going to the community college to learn a trade or go into some type of career that requires an associate's degree, or maybe going for 2 years and then moving on to a 4-year university. But I don't think they really think about the people who are already out there in the workforce, who are returned to the community college to either better themselves in the job they're in, or to learn some new learn of some new career path that they want to pursue. And then you have the life enrichment courses for folks like myself, in retirement, whose formal careers have come to an end, but they want to continue their education, and there are just all manner of opportunities in that regard. I took a few courses 25 years ago, here at Carteret Community College, and while I was a trustee, my wife and I took dancing lessons. I mean, so there are just many opportunities, and I don't think that many of the folks in the county are aware of the variety and the breadth of opportunity that's available.
Yeah, and one of the buildings I've seen you in before is the NC Martech building, our boat building facility. And one of my favorite things about that building is in the outboard engine class, you see high school students who are dual enrolled taking outboard engines, and then you see veterans who've left the military taking up that career, and then you see retired people who want to learn how to fix the engine on their boat. You just see such a mix of people. And I've seen you in the CNC router class, I think.
Well, actually, no. I helped David Flagler, who was the director of Martech 12 to 15 years ago. It was before I came on the board.
Okay.
And he needed help getting the CNC machine set up. And I have a CNC machine, in fact, the exact same kind that they have at Martech. And so I spent a good bit of time with David, and we set the machine up and got him up and running with it. So, yeah, that was a fun thing to do. And now they have a second 5-axis machine. So it's been great to see the progress that's occurred over there. And I also belong to a woodworking club. And we meet over at Martech every month. We have a club meeting in the evening, and the college has graciously allowed us to use that facility and the equipment in there for our club meetings.
Well, that brings up something that I've actually prepared to talk about today, because in addition to contributing a lot of great thoughts and questions and ideas as a trustee, you have also contributed your amazing woodworking skills, your artistry, really. And one example of that is this beautiful mace that you made for the college. And I'd love for you to tell a little bit about the mace and what you used to make it, and why you decided to undertake this amazing piece of art.
Well, the credit for the mace belongs solely to my fellow trustee, Mike Curtis. Mike is an attorney. He has a very interesting educational history himself. He went to a community college initially up in Massachusetts, ultimately graduated from Villanova Law School. And Mike came onto the board just as I was starting my second term. And Mike is a person who has a lot of ideas. And one of the ideas that he had maybe 2 years into his first term was that the college needed a ceremonial mace, which is ceremonial maces are common throughout Europe and the United States. A lot of colleges and educational institutions have them. It's basically an ornament that is used during various ceremonies. I was not real hot on the idea, and I just tried to ignore him, but he kept after me. And
he's
finally,
a pretty persistent
he's
person.
very persistent in a nice way.
Yes,
He's
very nice.
Just gently prodding you along. And so finally, I decided I'm going to make this mace just to get him off my back. Interestingly, I had been given a piece of wood by a friend of mine, 10 years ago, that came out of his grandfather's barn up in Jones County. And when I realized what this piece of wood was, I was flabbergasted. It was a piece of Brazilian rosewood, which is now illegal. It's been illegal to import into the United States or export out of Brazil since the mid-1990s. This particular piece of wood had been sitting in his grandfather's shop or barn or whatever it was for 50 years. And when he told me he was going to give it to me, I said, well, this is a valuable piece of wood. I'd be happy to buy it from you. And he insisted on giving it to me. He said, I want you to make something nice with it.
Oh, wow.
And so these sections of the mace are Brazilian rosewood from that piece of wood.
That's amazing. It's beautiful. And then what is this wood?
This is tulip wood.
Huh.
And these rings are sapele.
Is that a kind of mahogany?
It is it's an African wood that is used as a mahogany substitute. It's a little bit darker than mahogany, not quite as easy to work, but.
And then it has our official seal.
Yeah, which I did that on the CNC machine.
Wow.
I made the seal and then did a kind of a patinaed bronze coating on it, and then a little finial on the top out of ebony.
Wow, it's really beautiful, and it adds a lot of dignity to our ceremony each year at graduation, and we're really grateful for that. And then you went on and made a beautiful exhibit case also that we keep it in at the college, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I'd heard that y'all were looking to buy a case, and as I got to think, they're not going to be able to find a case to put this thing in. I may as well just make one.
So it fits just right. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it fits just right.
Yeah. Well, what would you tell community members who might be interested in learning more about trusteeship, or families who are trying to figure out whether they should talk their children into attending Carteret Community College?
Well, I think the best thing to tell them is visit the campus. I think in the case of someone who may be interested in becoming a trustee, my advice would be come to one or two board meetings. The board meetings are open to the public. So someone who has some interest in being a trustee can come to a board meeting, see how the business is performed, meet some of the trustees. If they know a trustee, speak with them, find out what's involved. I think it's best to do some homework before you make a decision. Yes, this is something that I'd like to do, because it does involve, as I mentioned when we first started talking, it does involve a fair amount of time and effort if you want to be an effective, productive trustee. In the case of families with high school or even middle school students, who are starting to think about their education process, we have, excellent counseling services, and if they would call or come over to the college and meet with some folks, set up some appointments with counselors or whatever to learn about what kinds of opportunities are available, not only when they graduate, but some of the opportunities that are available while they're still in high school. And I think you mentioned that earlier. I think we have an absolutely fabulous staff at the college who are more than willing to help people who come with questions or concerns or whatever. So that would be my recommendation, is to come to the campus, meet with some people, get your questions answered, and I think they'll find that there is something for everyone there.
That's great. Yeah, that's one of the things I often tell people is that you really don't know what we do over there unless you come into the buildings, because some of the labs we have are outfitted pretty amazingly.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And there's a lot of really expert teaching going on there, and great customer service. So I think that's good advice. What would you say to any future trustees who, we're getting 3 new trustee appointments this year? What would you say to them?
Well, I think what I would tell them is over the past, I would say 4 to 6 years, we have made a lot of progress as a board. We've changed our direction a little bit. Some of our focus, I think we're kind of switching over a little bit into a different governance model where the role of the trustees is going to include more forward vision and thinking about where the college is heading, as opposed to being tuned in more so to what the current students are accomplishing and so on and so forth. As I mentioned before, a lot of that is your job and your staff's job, and I think the board is very comfortable with how that's being taken care of. And if the Board of Trustees, with the contacts they have throughout the community, can get a better understanding of what the community needs are going to be from a business standpoint, education standpoint, whatever, over the next few years, I think along with our staff at the college, we can develop plans to be ready, for the changes that are going to be coming. And so I think that trajectory has been started, and my advice to the new trustees is to continue that trajectory and improve upon it.
That's great. Well, it's been an honor serving with you, and I just want to thank you on behalf of the college community on your service. You've devoted a lot of time and thought and craftsmanship to the role, and we've been so blessed to have you with us. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure, and it's been an honor.
Thank you. And I always end the interview by asking what you're currently reading, maybe a recommendation you can share with our listeners.
I just finished, last night, reading The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis wrote The Big Short, Moneyball, Liar's Poker. He is a fabulous writer. And the Undoing Project is is a book about 2 psychologists, Daniel Kahneman, who ultimately won the Nobel Prize for this work, and Amos Tversky. They're Israeli psychologists who did a great deal of work on confirmation bias and how it affects our decision making. And it is fascinating reading, at least it was for me. So I finished that last night, and then I've just started reading The Old Man and the Sea,
Hemingway,
which I haven't read for many, many years.
Oh, that's
and
great.
With the Marlin tournament just fishing, it got me thinking about that book. So I decided, well, I'm going to go back and read it again.
That's
so it's a
great.
nice short little novel, and I'm going to read that.
That's great. Well, I know that you and Michael Lewis share New Orleans in common. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, he's from New Orleans.
And you went to...
I went to school there for 8 years.
Yes, that's great. Well, thanks for that recommendation, and thanks for all you do for this community. You will be missed on our board, but we're so glad that you're a part of this community and a supporter of the college.
Thank you very much. It was good to be here.
Thank you. Please join us for our next episode of Sound Bytes.